right, here's the last one, and this is one I think has the most work to be done, simply because we're going to have to do some stuff that, again, you learn in your other math classes how to do. But here we have secants, we have sines, we have cosines, we have all squareds and everything. And we already know that sine and cosine squareds, sine plus cosine squared, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, and then all the rest of it happens. But I'm going to do something that hopefully you remember doing before, like in Math 3, I think it was. Factor by grouping. Because we have a bunch of stuff going on here, but in order for us to be able to work it out, we have to kind of like group things together and then simplify it that way. So I'm going to group these two together, and then I'm going to group these two together. And the only reason why I'm grouping these two together is because they have something in common. They have a common thing here. So we can be able to factor that out from this little section right here, and then hopefully figure out something that's going on. Hopefully. I hope. So let's see. If we can factor out that, we get 2 secant squared x. That would leave us with 1 minus sine squared x. And then for this other part, we can factor out a negative out of both of those again, -1. And this would be sine squared x plus cosine squared x. Okay, so here we factor out the secant squared x. So that leaves us with a 1 here. And that leaves us just with sine squared x. We factor out a negative here, like we did, I think, on example 4, I think it was. We factor out a -1, so therefore it made it sine squared x plus cosine squared x, which we already know what that equals because that's a trig identity. And also we have something going on here too. There's another trig identity that we talked about before. So hopefully by factoring, you can kind of see where there are identities that we've talked about, where we manipulated and all that good stuff. So here, with all the times that we have talked about this, we know that this part here goes to cosine squared x, because we talked about that identity, changing that, the Pythagorean identity around. We hit that multiple times. So I'm going to change that over to cosine squared using our identity. We already know this part back here, using our identity, is just 1. Then the rest of it I'm going to keep. And again, our answer we're trying to get to is equal to 1. So if we can do that, that would be wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Now our last part here is we can change this over to another trig function that should hopefully cancel things out. Maybe you think we can cancel things out there. Maybe not. Let's see. All right. So here we know secant is 1 over cosine. So I'm going to do 2 times 1 over cosine squared, because that's 2 that we keep, and then that's 1 over cosine squared. And then here we have cosine squared, and we have a -1 times 1, which is just -1, we know. All right. It actually is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be harder than this one. All right. So cosine squares cancel out. So we have 2 minus 1, because 1 times 1 is 1. And then a negative sign. Cosines cancel out. So we get 1 equals 1. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So all we did was factor by grouping. We combined the pieces and then factored out what they had in common. And then we went from there, and we used our trig identities, and it flowed really easily on this one. So I think the more you do it, the better you'll see things, like that 1 minus sine squared x, that right there, because we've done that so many times. Hopefully you just saw that it was cosine squared and didn't have to write it out and then manipulate the trig identity and then try to go from there and then substitute it in. So And then also the sine squared x plus cosine squared x. Hopefully you did that enough times that you can see that's just 1. So we don't have to write everything down. We can actually use our identities and just switch it over because we already know. But the same thing with secant squared. We also know it's 1 over cosine squared. So again, you don't have to write everything down. You just know it. So here, that's all I'm expecting you to be able to do. So there we go. Have fun with this. Enjoy it. It's okay. We're going to do good with this.